Hey everybody, it's Matt Shares, CEO of SBI. I am here on our revenue growth podcast of the week, talking to my buddy Chris Gosline. Chris is a fellow SBI colleague. So Chris, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and then you and I are going to dive deep into the hot topic of the week, which is all around quota relief in a COVID environment.
Sure, Matt, thanks. Happy to be here. As Matt said, my name is Chris Gosline. I'm an engagement manager with SBI, focusing on the sales compensation practice right now. So most of my expertise here we're going to talk about today is around sales compensation and quota.
Fantastic. So Chris, one of the things that is always interesting for us as a firm is when we aggregate the questions that we get and we look at sort of where they fall in a broad set of elements. The big questions this last 7 days, as people adjust and react to all that's happening right now, is what do I do with quotas? How do I reset them? Should I reset them? Right? My sales force is upset. They're panicking. So I know with all the years of experience you have doing this, you know how to do it in a normal world. We thought it would be good based on the feedback we got to talk about it in this adjusted world. So maybe help the team think about a structured way to think through this quota challenge.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I think that we're in uncharted territory. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, but I think we can all agree that the 2020 plan that you created early on in the year, it looks much different today or this week or even tomorrow than it had earlier on. So recognizing that there's a lot of external factors going on that's going to prevent business as usual for a period of time. Sellers aren't able to access their accounts, for example. You can't travel. We need to make sure that we're addressing this proactively and we're communicating the population of our company, that is the sales force, who has the most skin in the game because of their at-risk pay or their variable pay, which is driven by their, the success that they have and the revenue they generate, which right now they're being prevented from doing. So I think that, there's 100 other things that are important right now, but from the perspective of the individual contributor, this is definitely top of mind.
Yeah, and Chris, it's really interesting because something you said there that I want to make sure the audience understands. If you are a salesperson, half of your comp is based on variable, and achieving that is going and making sales calls. It's so much more to you, the seller, than just, am I going to get quota relief? You're thinking about, how do I feed my family? And I know we had some pretty hot debate with people saying, how can you think about quota? It's not about that. We've got a much larger situation. But some other people pushed back and said, what are you talking about? This is how I feed my family, right? This is how I pay my mortgage. This is how I take care of my aging parents. So is there anything we've learned over the past couple of weeks that you can help balance empathy and the greater good with survival for all of those individual contributors, sales managers, regional VPs that put it on the line every day?
Yeah, great question. And I think the first point here is just to recognize and communicate that this isn't being done because this is being done because the circumstances are truly outside of their control. So in times when there's a macroeconomic factors or natural disaster, such as we're experiencing now, this is when the leadership has to step in. They have to do some adjustments to the quota and make sure we keep them whole and protecting their at-risk pay. So, to get to the resolution and how we would address this and how I see this work at other companies in situations similar to this is the first thing you need to do is find or assemble your compensation governance committee so that you have a cross-functional group with an objective viewpoint that can analyze the impact of the situation in its entirety. The last thing we want to do is hand out windfalls to people that may not necessarily need them as much as other teams do. What I mean by that is the sales compensation governance committee, what they should do is establish a new fact base. So look at the forecast, look at the pipeline, look across the functions, look in if it's different between new business or the retention or customer success team, look across different verticals. I think, given the current situation, if your team dedicates their sales to manufacturing, we're going to see a lot greater of an impact than you may see on a company or a team that retain software clients, just for an example. So really take a big picture view, identify the potential tension points and where you're going to have more impact, and give people who are maybe in a less disadvantaged environment more of the quota, more of the burden than the people who are really suffering. In this environment, I would say it's the new business hunters, people selling to the manufacturing verticals. That's an example, but really look at it from a data perspective, establish a new fact base, and then identify what action needs to be taken. I think the most appropriate action you're going to find is going to be doing some type of quota relief. Yeah. And quota relief comes in multiple ways. So the first thing you could do, one of the most common ways, would be shifting the quota they had in Q2, for example, since we're in March here, shifting that quota to the back end. So put it into Q3, into Q4. Now that's kind of on the premise that we're going to see a recovery, and the uptick that we'll get in Q3 and Q4 will be offset by the additional quota they received, which is coming from what they were expecting to get in Q2. So you're keeping the person whole, recognizing that those external factors, they're outside their control, and not penalizing them for that. The second thing to do, and this applies if you have a monthly goal, monthly performance period, or a quarterly performance period, or a quarterly goal, just extend the performance period to an annual or semi-annual. So again, allowing them to make up what they may have missed from a target incentive in Q1 or March or April, and allow them to earn that over the course of the rest of the year. So give them the benefit of time. The third option, it's a little more radical. Yes.
Hey, Chris, just because I know the question will come up for the listeners, so I'm gonna do what my mom said I shouldn't, which is interrupt you. But for those people that are making those adjustments, should they think about changing the comp plan and saying, we're going to remove quota, move to more of a higher base guaranteed plan, and just erase quota for the year? The reason I'm asking, Chris, is you and I know we fielded that question from some emotional people over the week saying, how can people have quota in 2020? The world is upside down. So talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make a blanket statement and say no in all cases, because there are situations where that may be the best route. And I think that's why the new fact base and the competition governance committee will have to weigh the pros and cons of that as a most radical solution. Yeah. I think the third solution I was going to explain is kind of a in between, and that would just be to execute a draw. So if they had a certain amount of target incentive available to them in Q2 or in March or in April, give that to them, kind of a loan, then they get a chance to earn that back in the later part of the year. And of course, the organization decide whether or not that's a recoverable or non-recoverable draw. But it's a little bit in between. What I wouldn't do is make a wholesale change to the compensation plan, because that signals more permanency. And I think we need to recognize that this even though it is uncharted, this isn't permanent. We will recover. Things will get better. The economy's not going to keep going down. So making a wholesale change on the comp plan or taking away their variable completely, I think, is a little too drastic. Now, the way things have been going, if you ask me again next week, I may have a different answer. But right now, I don't think that's the best course of action in most cases.
Okay, super helpful. Well, and Chris, I mean, the goal of this show was to speak to our community, make sure that they had the sound bites of what we've seen aggregating across all the information. So if I recap what I heard, number one is I've got to assemble that cross-functional committee. So those leaders from different groups, they come together. Number two, we've all got to see a new fact base, because what we're doing in manufacturing versus software, and we've seen some of our clients, quite frankly, that are accelerating. And like you said, exactly, the movement of quota across the entire enterprise is a great idea. And I know we've had some people respond to that idea really well, right? Number three, I heard you talk about is the shifting, right, across different quarters, back-ended draws. There's multiple options. And then number four, don't panic, right? The power of impermanence. So any other final thoughts before we let the audience get back to doing their thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing to piggyback on the don't panic part is this is a time to step up as a leader and really preserve the culture of your organization, proactively address this. You know, everyone's thinking about this in the individual contributor level, so it'll go a long way to come and address their concerns and get ahead of this.
All right. Well, Chris, as always, appreciate you joining us. good to see you, man, because I can't see you in the office. So glad I could put some eyes on you. For everybody else, if you'd like the full download of the tool and the steps to take to walk through this with Chris's 20 years of experience, you can get that on our website. And as always, at this time, we want to make sure you're staying safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you along the way.
Thank you.